Everyone, Sivra here. So this is the last Jeff the Killer thing I'm doing for today. Tomorrow I will finish it up, but right now my neck is kind of killing me. So, I'll finish this one up, or I'll just read this part here, and then I'll finish it up tomorrow. So, let's get started. Give me a minute. I have to, because the way this is set up, this guy has it to where it goes from part 5 down to part 1, so I have to scroll up a lot. Alright. Oh, for fuck's sake. Come on. Come on. Come on. Okay, this is... Alright. So, here we go. Abby didn't know what to do. Since her best friend was now an orphan, she convinced her parents to let Wendy stay with them until they graduated from high school. After that, she was going to move in with her aunt over the summer. Abby's main reasoning was that Wendy was going to need someone to lean on after such a horrible tragedy. Abby believed that she could be that person. But ever since Wendy moved in, she had started becoming withdrawn from the world around her. Wendy hardly talked to anyone. She barely ate. She often woke up screaming in the middle of the night. She always acted as if someone was following her, watching her. Yet she always wanted to be alone. Not to mention, her appearance had become startling from lack of sleep and care. When Abby tried talking to her, Wendy just shut her out. Abby didn't want Wendy to deal with her pain alone. But what could she do? It wasn't like before, when the worst thing that could happen was a petty argument with her parents. Her parents, if only they were here. But if they were here, then Abby wouldn't be having this problem. It was all his fault. Oh, how she hated him. From the moment she laid eyes on him, she knew he was trouble. But Wendy couldn't see it. All she could see was someone she could try to save. Now it was her who needed saving, and he was still out there, somewhere. A month after the murders, on a rainy evening, Abby lay in her bed. Across the room from her, Wendy laid in her own bed, scribbling furiously in a diary she'd been keeping. When she finished, she placed it on her side of the bookshelf with her other belongings. Wendy then peeked out of her window and froze for a moment before closing the curtains. She looked over at Abby, who was starting to fall asleep. Abby? Remember when we first met in middle school? Yeah? Why? I was just thinking back on my life, and how far I've come. I've been trying to write them all down, all the good memories I have to leave behind after I'm gone. Abby sleepily propped herself up on one elbow and looked at her. Gone? Where are you going? Wendy didn't respond right away. Nowhere. It was just a figure of speech. Abby stared at her for a minute before collapsing back onto her pillow. Don't scare me like that. They were both silent for a minute. Abby started drifting off to sleep again. When we first met, I was the weird kid, Wendy said, waking Abby up again. I remember how nobody talked to me at first. I spent most of elementary school alone because I wasn't into the same things that every other kid was. Then one day you spoke to me. Yeah, Abby slurred, trying to remember. I told you I liked your dress, the one with the blue flowers, the one with the blue flowers on it. Yep, and we'd been best friends ever since. And after that, more friends came. Never thanked you for that, for being my friend. You didn't have to thank me. I liked you. I liked the fact that you were different. At least, back then you were. High school normalized you. They both chuckled. Yeah, I became normal, whatever that means. But I was still drawn to weird people. Yeah, Abby yawned. Remember all those guys I dated? Wendy laughed. Steven, Drew, Gary, the guy who was obsessed with chins, Jeff, the homicidal psychopath. Wendy was quiet for a moment. Abby sat up and looked at her. I'm sorry, but I can't help being a little mad at you for this. It's been a long enough time since the funerals for me to say that. I know you couldn't have known, but the worst part is that you've changed on me. This is the longest conversation we've had since... No, you're right. I haven't been a good friend, and I'm sorry. Abby laid back down. No, don't be sorry. I forgot about that golden heart of yours. You could never think ill of anyone, not even him. He didn't seem dangerous at all while we were dating, Wendy said in a quiet voice. He was a bit distant and quiet, but I thought he genuinely loved... Wendy looked up to see that Abby had drifted off to sleep. She got up, walked over to a friend's bed, crouching down in front of her. She tucked some straight hair behind her ear. Leaning down, she whispered in her ear, "Thanks for being my friend." Abby opened her heavy eyes long enough to see Wendy quietly walk out of the room. "Wendy, where are you going?" she moaned, but sleep overtook her as her vision got blurry. Then everything went black. The next morning, Abby woke up to find Wendy's bed empty. In fact, it didn't even look slept in. Abby sat up and tried to remember what happened the previous night. All that talk about looking back on her life and thanking her for being her friend, it almost seemed like she was saying goodbye. Abby searched the house calling her friend's name, but she was nowhere to be found. First she alerted her parents, then the police, then the whole town. Some people claimed to have seen her on the night she went missing, but no matter how many search parties were sent out, no matter how much the reward was for any information on her whereabouts, no matter how much Abby wished, Wendy remained missing. 2 months after her disappearance, Abby noticed that the police were starting to give up. They had no leads and no evidence of any kind. They began treating her as a runaway because of her deep depression over the deaths of her parents. Never mind the fact that none of her clothes or other belongings were missing. They didn't even bother to look through them. They assured Abby and her parents that Wendy would return when she was ready, or that she would eventually be found. Abby wasn't convinced, but she couldn't convince anyone else to listen to her. Her mother and father cared about Wendy very much, but they were tired and wanted to get on with their lives, so Abby had to find her friend on her own. At the very least, find out what happened to her. Abby decided to start with Wendy's computer. Her boyfriend, Tucker, was an expert hacker. He could hack into just about anything. So when Abby asked if he could come over and try to break into her computer, he was almost insulted that she even asked if he could do it. After they successfully hacked into her computer, they did a wide search. Finding nothing suspicious, they decided to check her emails. But even after hacking into it, there were no emails or messages of any sort to give them a clue. Ugh, Wendy sat back in her chair, exasperated. "This is hopeless. Don't give up yet, babe," Tucker said, getting up and massaging her neck. "I'm sure there's no need for any of this anyways. She'll come back." "Yeah, and when she does, I'm going to beat the living crap out of her." "Shh," he whispered, and massaged the back of her neck a little bit harder, causing her to moan softly. Tucker, "Hey." Tucker smiled. "Hey, I still have a half an hour before I have to meet up with the guys. Your parents are out. Want to fool around a little?" Abby leaned her head back to grin at him. "I could use some comfort." After he left, Abby straightened herself. I can't talk. Abby straightened herself up and continued to explore Wendy's computer. Looking at her search history, Abby wondered just what was going through her friend's mind before she disappeared. There were searches about night terrors, sleep paralysis, and articles on other recent disappearances happening around town. Abby eventually found herself back in Wendy's email. She hadn't thought before to check the spam folder, so she clicked it. Abby was shocked to find that there were hundreds of messages in the folder, all from an anonymous email address. Abby clicked on an email which read, "I'm coming for you." Abby was more than a little spooked. She clicked on another one. "Gonna get you, baby." Wendy was frightened, but she clicked on another one, and another, and another. The more she read, the colder the chill creeping up her spine became. "Don't try to run. No one can save you from me. There's no escape. There's nowhere to hide. You'll be mine again. You better not tell anyone, or they're next. The message is dated all the way back to the day before her parents' funeral. Abby shook her head as hot tears ran down her cheeks. So, she had been dealing with this all by herself for so long. No wonder she had changed so much, and wouldn't let anyone in. Abby composed herself, clicked on the very first message sent to Wendy. I want you, but we won't be separated for much longer. Jeff is coming. Abby's hand flew to her mouth. Jeff, of course. There's no denying it now. Jeff had something to do with it, but first she needed more proof. Abby quickly wiped away the tears and began to look through all of Wendy's things. She looked through her book bag, her side of the closet, under her bed, and her side of the bookshelf. She flipped through some of her notebooks, which she found were pages sloppily scrawled on by her friend in the margins of almost every page. Jeff is coming. Jeff is coming for me. There's no escape for me. It's all over. I can't run. I can't hide. He won't stop. I have to protect them. No one else needs to die. Jeff. 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 He's coming. She tossed it onto Wendy's bed and to give the police and... What? She tossed it onto Wendy's bed to give it to the police and looked through her other notebooks and textbooks. All the same. How could she have kept it inside all this time? Abby glanced at all the titles until her eyes rested on Wendy's journal, partially hidden underneath a world history textbook. Cautiously, she picked it up and read the first entry. Dear Abby, if you're reading this, stop right now. By now I've probably disappeared. If you said stop right now, why the fuck did you keep writing, you dumbass? Sorry. If you're reading this, stop right now. By now I've probably disappeared, and I know you want answers, but it's too dangerous. Just forget about me and move on with your life. You're strong, stronger than I am. But there's evil in this world that you just can't fight. You'll definitely lose. So just put this down. In fact, bury it or burn it. It doesn't matter now that I'm gone. I only kept it so that I could stay sane. I wanted to write down everything I could remember about my life, so that I wouldn't forget. I wanted to talk to you so badly. That would have been sealing your doom. I won't make the same mistake twice. Goodbye, Abby. You're my very best friend, and I love you. Have a great life. Love, Wendy. After a few moments of uncontrollable sobbing, Abby wondered why she left the journal behind if it was so dangerous. Maybe she didn't get the opportunity to get rid of it. Abby stared at the journal, conflicted about whether or not to continue reading. She decided to take the chance. She flipped to the next page, but it was just an entry about her earliest memory. It went on like that for the first half of the journal, as if she was trying to write down every single memory of her life that she could remember. Even the memory of when they first met was there. Abby smiled as she tried to blink back tears. But then it took a dark turn, when he began to write about nightmares that she had been having. One about a pale-faced figure chasing her through the cornfields. I wonder who that could be. Abby had heard about that night when Abby was telling the police about her parents' murder. She remembered feeling infuriated about the fact that the police couldn't find the killer, even though he was just a teenage boy. Entries continued. Apparently, Wendy sometimes couldn't sleep at night because she heard noises outside the window. Sometimes when she thought she was alone, she would feel like someone was watching her, but when she looked, no one was there. But there was someone there, as confirmed by the messages she was receiving. There was even a time when she actually saw him. It was a cold night, about a week before she disappeared. She'd gotten up to close the window when she saw him. He was standing outside their window with his hood up, head held down. Since their bedroom was on the second floor, he couldn't reach her. Still, he slowly lifted his head and locked eyes with her. Wendy gasped at the sight of his face, but she didn't turn away. They stayed like that for what seemed like hours. But when Abby shifted in bed, blissfully unaware of any danger, Wendy turned to make sure she was still asleep. When she turned back to the window, he was gone. If she knew it was him, then why did she gasp when she saw his face? Abby wondered aloud. She sank down onto the bed. So he was here this whole time, yet no one even knew. No wonder Wendy felt so alone. Abby continued to flip through the journal, reading about many more mysterious things happening to her and about Wendy's depression and loneliness. But it wasn't until she got to the back of the book that Abby shrieked and let the book slip out of her hand. Abby dropped to the floor and slowly opened the book again. On the back cover of the journal was a sketch of Jeff, dated a week before Wendy disappeared. But this was no ordinary portrait. He still wore the Joker makeup, but his face was now horribly mutilated. His eyelids, nose, and lips were all missing. The only color on the picture around the area around his mouth where Wendy had scribbled in red ink. And underneath this picture, also written in red, was one last message. Jeff is here. That was a good one. So I will upload this and I shall finish it tomorrow. So, this is Sifral signing off.